The air hung heavy with warmth, though not from the sun's embrace. The heat enveloped you, beginning in your chest, swirling down to your belly, leaving your hands adrift, unsure of their place. His hands roamed freely, resting on my waist, slipping beneath my top, fingers grazing the delicate edges of my lace bra. My breath came in labored gasps. I pressed myself against the guest bedroom wall, stifling a moan as his lips trailed down my neck. Jake, the closest companion of my husband. His mouth radiated warmth, filled with a ravenous desire. The scent of his cologne, earthy and robust, enveloped my senses with a comforting familiarity. My dress had already gathered at my thighs, and my panties set aside. His fingertips brushed against my legs, and in that fleeting moment, all I could focus on was the overwhelming need that surged within me. "You're trembling," he murmured, his lips grazing my ear. "I understand," I inhaled. And just when it seemed the world was on the brink of collapse. "Hold on," I murmured. "Before I continue, there's something you must do for me. Kindly show your appreciation for this video. Consider subscribing to the channel and ring that bell. Prepare yourself, for you are about to uncover the most astonishing and taboo secret I have ever shared with another soul. Allow me to transport you to a different time. Returning to the origins of it all, I entered into marriage with Daniel at the age of 27. Our paths crossed in Houston, during a corporate retreat organized by my firm. He possessed intelligence, a polished appearance, and a gentle nature. All aspects of his being radiated a sense of stability. My friends referred to him as the reliable choice. In those days I had grown weary of taking risks. Daniel possessed a certain charm, and the intimacy was satisfactory, at least in the beginning. He truly acknowledged my presence. After a few whirlwind months, we took the plunge and moved in together, got engaged, and then celebrated our love in a beautiful ceremony just outside Austin. In the realm of suburban aspirations, where white picket fences stand as symbols of contentment, and a golden retriever named Max frolics in the yard, one finds the familiar tapestry of life woven with threads of the ordinary. Yet circumstances evolve. Not in an instant. Gently, silently, Daniel began to extend his work hours. Promotions brought increased stress, longer nights, and additional time spent away. I truly grasped it, I assure you. Yet, after 2 years of marriage, I began to sense that I was merely a polished trophy on display. A pristine kitchen, a courteous smile, a gap to occupy on Friday evenings, provided he wasn't too fatigued. And then there were his companions, Jake and Adrien. Jake was a constant presence, always lingering nearby. He was Daniel's college buddy, the sort of guy you'd categorize as a flirt the moment he spoke. Tall and broad-shouldered, he possessed that rugged Texas boy charm that turned heads at the gas station. His confidence was unyielding. Adrien stood apart from the rest, calm and watchful. He was employed in the realm of IT, spoke at a deliberate pace, and observed everything with keen interest, particularly me. It all began with humor. Jake would give a playful wink as I leaned down to retrieve a beer from the cooler. Adrien would hover in the kitchen, extending his stay just a touch beyond necessity as I prepared the meal. Initially, it seemed innocuous, an elevation of my self-esteem. Honestly, who can resist a bit of attention? Yet, one fateful night, it ceased to be innocuous. We hosted a barbecue, inviting Daniel, his friends, and a handful of neighbors. The grill sizzled with heat, the music pulsed vibrantly, and the beers cascaded freely. Daniel had triumphed one too many times, and by the stroke of 10 p.m., he lay sprawled on the couch, lost to the world in a deep slumber. As I was tidying up, Jake approached from behind, snatched a beer from the fridge, and leaned in just a bit too close for comfort. "You always look good in that dress," he said, his voice a soft murmur. I pivoted, arching an eyebrow in curiosity. "Have you noticed me in this before?" Indeed, he wore a smirk. "Yet this evening you don it for my sake." I ought to have brushed it aside with a chuckle. I should have told him to stop. However, I did not. In that moment, I chose to smile. "Don't get too carried away with your own self-importance." He entered the room, very near, so near that the scent of beer lingered on his breath. You deserve so much more than being with someone who drifts off to sleep by 10 every evening." I stood still, caught in a moment of sheer disbelief. It marked the first occasion in months that anyone had laid eyes on me. Not in the role of a wife. Not in the role of a homemaker. As a female. I ought to have turned back, yet I chose not to. Instead, I murmured, "Perhaps I require someone to help me remember the sensation of being truly seen." It wasn't something I had meticulously arranged. Initially, not at all. Yet, the thought of him, his unwavering confidence, his audacious spirit, haunted my nights, leaving me restless and contemplative. I would lie in bed beside Daniel, lost in daydreams of Jake, his hands on my skin, his lips brushing against mine, the way his voice would lower enticingly when he flirted. It occurred 2 weeks later. Daniel extended an invitation to Jake, hoping to share the excitement of the game together. They sipped their drinks, shared laughter, and reminisced about a cherished college memory. I politely took my leave, mentioning that I intended to retire early for the night. Yet I remained wide awake, anticipating, attentively absorbing. Daniel finally succumbed to slumber. I descended once more, clad in my robe. Jake remained sprawled on the couch. He lifted his gaze and offered a smile. Having trouble finding rest? I remained silent. I rose from my slumber, took a seat beside him, and allowed the robe to slip just enough to reveal my thigh. His eyes deepened into shadows. "Are you certain?" I gave a slight nod. In that moment, the boundary was irrevocably breached. I was aware of its wrongness. I sensed it instantly as I positioned myself above him, the robe clinging precariously to my shoulders, his hands clutching my thighs with a desperation that suggested I was the feast he had been yearning for. Yet I pressed on. For once you experience the profound sensation of being truly desired, it becomes an indelible part of your existence, impossible to forget. Jake evoked that feeling in me. Each and every time. Each soft murmur. Each caress. Each time he enveloped me in his embrace, it felt as though I were more than merely Daniel's wife. And then arrived the night that solidified everything, the night we both ventured too far to ever feign it didn't occur. It was the night of poker. Daniel held poker nights every month without fail. Typically, it was only the trio Daniel, Jake, and Adrien. I consistently prepared snacks for them, poured their drinks, and then discreetly slipped away to allow them their time together. Yet, on this occasion, Daniel requested that I linger for a bit longer. He mentioned that my presence brought a sense of enjoyment, as if it infused the atmosphere with a playful energy. I engaged in the game, clad in a modest black tank top, unencumbered by a bra, and paired with snug gray shorts that accentuated my figure perfectly. I feigned ignorance to the intensity of Jake's gaze as I bent over the table to gather the empty bottles. Adrien spoke sparingly, yet his eyes held a lingering intensity, perpetually observing, perpetually silent. As the fourth round of whiskey settled in, Daniel's words began to tumble out in a slurred haze. "I'm going to go crash," he mumbled. "Complete your task without my presence." And he indeed did. There it is, positioned perfectly on the recliner. Unconscious and unresponsive, I cast a sidelong glance at Jake, my eyebrow arching in silent inquiry. Well, that was the end of poker night. He flashed a grin. "It seems we've arrived at the point of strip poker, haven't we?" I chuckled, my eyes rolling in exasperation. "Proceed with caution. I possess a strong competitive spirit." Adrien rose to his feet and reached for his jacket. "I suppose it's time for me to take my leave." He gazed at me for a moment longer than necessary before finally uttering, "You two have fun." His words carried a certain weight, a nuance that lingered in the air. As if he were aware. As if he yearned for something to unfold. As the door clicked shut behind him, Jake leaned in, resting his elbows on his knees. "You're quite perilous, aren't you?" "In what way?" "You act as if you're unaware of the allure you possess. Yet you do." I inclined my head, allowing my finger to glide gently up my thigh. "Do I?" His eyes deepened into shadows. This time he refrained from asking. He rose to his feet, circled the table, and grasped my wrist, pulling me up with a firm yet deliberate motion. Our lips met with a fierce intensity. Ravenous, immediate attention required. as if the previous occasion hadn't been sufficient. In mere seconds, his hand slipped beneath my tank top. I inhaled sharply as he pressed me against the fridge, sending magnets clattering to the floor. "Bedroom?" he inquired softly, his lips brushing against hers. I shook my head in disbelief. I whispered, "Couch." At this moment, he was already convinced. With a swift motion, he ripped away my shorts and panties, laying me back on the cushions, his tongue gliding between my thighs with the confidence of someone who was well aware of his craft. I bit my lips with such intensity that I almost drew blood. Daniel lay merely 10 feet away, lost in the depths of slumber, his snores echoing softly from the recliner. Oblivious to the reality unfolding just across the room, his best friend was entwined with his wife, her moans punctuating the silence of the night. It was perilous. It was utterly insane. It was precisely what I had envisioned. We pressed on. Week after week. Brief encounters in the laundry room, journeys by car that culminated in the stillness of motel parking lots. I navigated a dual existence, caught between guilt and euphoria. Daniel remained blissfully unaware. He would lean in to kiss me goodnight, his voice warm as he expressed pride in my efforts to maintain the household, before drifting off to sleep while I quietly texted Jake beneath the covers. Yet the reality? It had transcended beyond merely being about Jake. Then Adrien arrived. On a Thursday evening, Daniel embarked on a 3-day business journey to Dallas. Jake was occupied, and I assumed it would be a serene evening filled with wine and television. It was only then that a message arrived. "Michael, are you available this evening?" My eyes flickered over the screen. Adrien, the reserved individual? The one who always regarded me with an air of knowing, as if he held secrets just beyond his words? I replied with a message. "Hello there." He responded, "I beheld you, the evening of poker." My heart ceased to beat. I typed swiftly, "What do you mean by saying you saw me?" "Michael, you and Jake. You believed I had departed, yet I realized I had left my watch behind, returned silently, and indeed, I observed you." I almost hurled my phone across the room, yet his subsequent message left me paralyzed. "Michael, I'm not angry. I'm curious, what is it about him that stands out? Why not me?" In that instant, my stomach churned with a sudden twist. After an hour of contemplation, I finally crafted my response. "Please come over." He was efficient with his time. At precisely 10 p.m., he arrived at my door. I slipped it open, clad solely in a silk robe. Once more. Initially, he remained silent. "I have just crossed the threshold," gazed at me from head to toe. "Are you certain?" he inquired. I gave a slight nod, and then he pressed his lips against mine. Adrien stood apart from the rest. He lacked the roughness of Jake. He took his time. He didn't take. He revealed me. He removed my clothing layer by layer, caressed me as if I were holy. Softly spoken secrets brushed against my ear, igniting a longing within me that I never knew existed. That night lingered on. The duration felt extensive, profound, brimming with lingering gazes, gentle sighs, and hushed revelations. And for the very first time, I experienced a sensation that transcended mere lust. I experienced a sense of being valued as an individual that filled me with a fear greater than anything I had ever known. Now it had evolved beyond merely being a clandestine romance. It was 2 o'clock. If you remain engaged, I can sense your thoughts. I find myself in disarray. Perhaps I am. Yet, if you find yourself here, it's evident that you've been captivated. Feel free to proceed. Kindly give this video a thumbs up. Disseminate it. If you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? You haven't yet encountered the most astonishing aspect. When Adrien uncovered the truth about everything, he stayed put. He yearned for something greater. He was not alone in this regard. There exists a chilling allure in the thrill of evading consequences, a blend of fear and fascination that captivates the senses. There is no doubt. There shall be no confrontation. There are no repercussions. As I found myself balancing both Jake and Adrien, it transcended mere lust. It was mastery. It was pure adrenaline. It was a peculiar thrill, the kind that danced in the shadows of my mind, knowing that while my husband beamed at me from across the dinner table, pressed a gentle kiss to my cheek, and whispered sweet affirmations of love, his two closest friends were exploring my body in ways he could scarcely fathom. Adrien and I continued on. Undeterred by that initial evening, it evolved into our cherished ritual. Whenever Daniel found himself working late or away on a trip, Adrien would make it a point to drop by. Occasionally, it's under the pretext of assisting me with the Wi-Fi or delivering something Daniel left behind. Yet, beyond the confines of our bedroom door, indeed our bedroom, a different reality unfolded. Adrien stood apart from Jake in every admirable way. Jake was on fire, swift, untamed, and unrepentant. Adrien embodied water. Profound, unhurried, heartfelt. He posed inquiries. He was curious about my preferences. Reflections that arose during moments of self-exploration. He gazed into my eyes as he moved within me. And when I arrived, it felt as though my entire being came undone. What then rendered it even more perilous? They were aware of one another. It wasn't until that fateful night, when everything reached its climax, that I discovered the truth. The rain fell steadily on that Friday. Daniel had recently departed for a weekend work retreat in San Antonio. Silence enveloped the house. Tranquil. Just as the clock struck 8 p.m., a message from Jake lit up my phone. "Jake, are you by yourself?" I responded, "Certainly." After a brief span of 10 minutes, the doorbell chimed. I anticipated only his presence. Yet, upon opening it, Adrien accompanied him. My heart sank. What could this be? They crossed the threshold. Jake closed the door softly, sealing them in the quiet space beyond. Adrien fixed his gaze on me, his expression serious as he declared, "We need to talk." I remained motionless in the living room, facing them as they sat before me, poised like two composed prosecutors. "I know you've been with both of us," Jake said. "We have discussed it." "What about it?" I murmured, my arms folded tightly across my chest, my heart racing with intensity. "And we're not mad," Adrien said. "We simply want to take this further?" Jake asked, leaning back with that trademark cocky smile. My throat felt parched. "Additionally? What is the significance of that?" Adrien's voice carried a softness that was almost soothing. "It signifies that we no longer need to hide in the shadows. We are more than willing to share." I blinked. "Surely you jest." "We're not," Jake stated. "Both of us desire you. It's evident that you desire both of us, so why not all of us?" I chuckled uneasily. "A discussion about a threesome is underway." Jake wore a sly smirk. "Is that what you wish to name it?" My breath caught in my throat. I gazed at the two of them, taking in the rugged allure of Jake and the subtle intensity of Adrien, and for the first time, I didn't sense that I was being unfaithful. A surge of power coursed through me. It occurred for the very first time. I found myself shaking uncontrollably. They arrived the following night. No games. No poker. Only me. Clad in a luxurious silk robe. Perched on the edge of the bed. Anticipation hangs in the air. It was Adrien who initiated the kiss. Gradually, profoundly, he murmured, "You're beautiful." Then Jake lifted me gently and pressed his lips against the other side of my neck. "Tonight you belong to us." They removed my clothing layer by layer. Then they took turns. There is one behind me, one ahead. Hands abound. Mouths abound. For the first time in my life, I found myself uncertain of which direction to express my pleasure. I simply released my grip. Entirely, completely. As if she were a woman with nothing to lose and everything to gain. Transcended the physical realm, Adrien began sending me charming messages. In the midst of the day, Jake dispatched provocative voice notes. They began to compete, albeit in a subtle manner, each trying to determine who could lift my spirits more effectively, who would receive my texts first, and who I would choose to see more often, and I allowed it to unfold. I reveled in the spotlight. For the first time since my honeymoon, a surge of vitality coursed through me. However, it is inevitable that such intensity will not remain effortless for an extended period. Jake began to feel a pang of jealousy. He craved additional nights of solitude, greater mastery. He expressed his reluctance to share me, likening the idea to that of a community toy. Adrien, in contrast, sought something deeper than mere physical connection. He began to inquire about my marriage, contemplating the true nature of my happiness, contemplating the possibility of parting ways with Daniel. That filled me with fear. I never intended to depart. Daniel embodied stability, wealth, esteem. However, what about Jake and Adrien? They existed in the realm of fantasy, fervor. Break free. One night, following a particularly intense encounter with both of them, our third arrangement, I found myself lying naked between them, attempting to regain my breath. Jake leaned in, brushed his fingers gently against my cheek and asked, "Have you ever considered telling him?" I stood still, caught in a moment of disbelief. "Daniel?" He inclined his head in acknowledgement. What if we were to share it with him? Perhaps he would find it appealing. One can never be certain these days. Adrien interjected, "Refrain from making unwise choices. You would devastate her existence. She is an adult woman. She is not content." In a moment of unexpected joy, I found myself snapping. "I simply desire more. I certainly don't wish to jeopardize my marriage." They exchanged glances. "Then look at me." Then they exchanged glances once more. In that instant, a revelation dawned upon me. This had ceased to be mere amusement for them. They were succumbing to my charm. Both of them. It is often said that to toy with flames is to invite the risk of being scorched. What if you find yourself enamored with the warmth? What if the burn surpasses every sensation you've ever experienced? That night, the night we crossed that line while my husband lay asleep upstairs, was the moment I realized there was no turning back. I wasn't pretending. I was simply bored or lonely. I was not. I made this choice. Making a selection. Jake, Michael. Both of them. Daniel had recently returned from an extensive business trip. He felt weary, exhausted. I fulfilled the role of a devoted wife, serving him a warm meal, massaging his shoulders and planting gentle kisses on his neck. That night, I allowed him to make love to me. Gentle, unsurprising, in the manner we have always approached it. He drifted into slumber with a contented smile, snoring softly, oblivious to the fact that his wife lay awake, seething with unspoken thoughts. At 12:47 a.m., my phone vibrated quietly in the stillness. "Jake, we find ourselves outdoors." Rear entrance. My heart pounded like a drum. I gazed at Daniel, peacefully slumbering, his face serene, and quietly slipped out of bed. I went without even putting on underwear. Having just donned a silk robe, I descended the stairs, moving with the quiet grace of a whisper. They stood in anticipation. Jake rested against the doorframe, clad in his hoodie, his eyes shadowed with a deep ravenous longing. Adrien stood next to him, hands tucked into his pockets, jaw set tight. "Are you certain about this?" Adrien inquired. I inclined my head in agreement. "Silence is golden. Simply accompany me." We chose not to stay at a hotel. We did not stealthily make our way to the garage. We accomplished it right there, within the confines of the living room, underneath our bedroom, with Daniel peacefully slumbering just a floor above us. Jake pulled the robe apart with a swift motion. My bare chest rose and fell with each breath I took. Without uttering a single word, he positioned me over the arm of the couch. Adrien settled into his seat, observing me intently, his hand moving as I let out soft moans, my face pressed into a cushion to stifle the noise. When Adrien joined, it felt like an overwhelming surge. Fingers clutching, biting lips, whispers caress my skin like forbidden secrets. "Do you not find joy in this? Your husband is just upstairs. He doesn't caress you in the way we do." They were not mistaken. What is the truth? I truly loved it. We journeyed for hours on end, paused for reflection, commenced anew. At one moment I found myself on my knees, my head resting in Adrien's lap, while Jake held my hips from behind. Amidst this chaotic scene, my husband sent me a text. "Daniel, where might you be? I assumed you were already tucked in for the night." I stood still, my body paralyzed, breathless, soaked to the bone. I dabbed my lips, reached for my phone and replied with a text. Below. Felt a pang of hunger. "I will be up shortly." Adrien let out a soft chuckle. Jake flashed a grin. And so they pressed on. Felt intoxicating. I was intoxicated by the sheer force of authority. Regarding pleasure, regarding the peril. As we wrapped up, the clock struck 3:14 a.m. I bid them farewell with a kiss at the back door and slipped into the shower, masking the night's events as if they had never transpired. Slipped beneath the covers beside Daniel. He stirred, drew me close and murmured, "Love you." A smile crept across my face in the shadows. I love you as well. Perhaps a fragment of my being still lingered there. However, not in an identical manner. Not after that evening. The story didn't end there. Jake and I still found ourselves entangled whenever the chance arose. Adrien evolved into something deeper, a connection woven through daytime texts, gentle kisses stolen away from prying eyes, and those long drives where our conversations flowed, accompanied by playful touches and teasing glances. And Daniel? Still oblivious. Still loving. Still mine. You probably think I'm terrible. Maybe I am. But let me ask you something. If your husband stopped noticing you, if two gorgeous, eager, and deeply attentive men offered you passion, intensity, and total desire, and you knew you'd never get caught, would you really say no? This is where the story ends. But the truth? I still live it. Every time Daniel leaves town,